This is WVBN from the United States. In the aftermath of the Battle of Guam, Douglas MacArthur, with some help from Augusta, turned to the post-battle bureaucracy and politics demanded of him. The Guam weather machine was successfully deactivated, and it was arranged for a temporary Japanese and British presence to remain as the two nations licked their wounds and prepared for their next steps. It was also arranged that Task Force 11, one of the primary American shipping escorts, would make its way to Guam to link up with the Japanese force in order to transport a shipment across the Pacific, while the US was still unable to fully project power across the region. Both British and the Philippines soldiers would remain on Guam for the time being to assist in infrastructure repairs, as much of the island's population had been wiped out. The bulk of MacArthur's duties ended as he held a soiree aboard Augusta with all three nations in attendance, delivering awards, symbolic gifts, and unifying remarks about the actions of the soldiers who had fought. For the first time in many years, the three Pacific powers were on good terms. Back in the United States, Norfolk was attacked by retaliatory strikes from Cassandra. For the first time in months, Morgana mist threatened the coastline of the US. Thankfully, soldiers and civilians had been drilling and preparing for such a terrible occurrence, and when alarms blared, soldiers and civilians took shelter in deep concrete bunkers, hoping and praying that the mist would not breach their seals. After 12 hours, the mist was swept away by the wind, and the base personnel emerged unharmed. Northeast of Norfolk, the Second Fleet had discovered elements of Cassandra's fleet, and engaged in a pitched battle against the Morgana. Maryland and Wichita utilized radar technology to locate and range the Morgana, opening up their batteries as soon as they had a firing solution. Hours earlier, Yorktown had driven the enemy fleet down towards the heavy guns of the American battleships with her airstrikes, and the Morgana found themselves trapped between Maryland, Wichita, Arkansas, and Wyoming, and many other American ships, all of whom were now blasting shells into them with deadly accuracy. With hardly any damage received, it was estimated that the Second Fleet had wiped out another quarter of Cassandra's forces. The only unanswered question was where the fleet that had assaulted Norfolk had gone, which some attributed to a mysterious vessel heading north near Cape Lookout in North Carolina. Near the Galapagos, Third Fleet, under the command of Enterprise, set out to finally kill the sin that had been plaguing the region once and for all. Battered down by numerous attacks, the Morgana should have been easy pickings, which is why Third Fleet was surprised when far more squadrons than Sin should have had were encountered while in the air. Enterprise's fighters cut down a squadron of bombers, while Minneapolis spotted an unexpected escort through the fog. She also spotted their quarry, but Sin was wrapped in glowing chains by the rest of the escort fleet as if held afloat by them. The garish fleet presented a larger threat than Third Fleet had anticipated, and questions about whether they should engage or not were answered when Enterprise and Halsey played their trump card. The Ecuadorian Navy had a belle of their own, an Abdon Calderon, and she was ready to assist. Though a far older ship, Calderon carried with her the spirit of Ecuadorians through their fight for independence, and had been rescuing refugees from the Galapagos and keeping Morgana at bay on her own. Colombia, too, had showed up to the fight, escorting Calderon with their destroyers Antioquia and Caldas. Whether out of overconfidence or fear, the Morgana fleet fell victim to Halsey's strategy, as he tricked the Morgana fleet into committing to an attack against St. Louis and Minneapolis, only for the two to turn their attack against them as the rest of the fleet sailed in behind them and separated them from Sin. Now without escorts, Enterprise dispatched her bombers to wreak havoc on the carrier, and a mischief masquerading as an oversized Morgana still tied to Sin. As Sin began to sink, she took down the mischief with her, finally ending the threat to much of South America. When all was said and done, the three navies took time to mingle with one another, giving reporters and correspondents plenty of photographs and interviews. In the Philippines, Commander John Limowig took USS Lanikai, a diesel-powered schooner, on a tour of the Philippines. Awakening in the Philippines, the belle became a local native celebrity, once the US Navy made the population aware of her. Mingling with local workers and aristocrats alike, she popularized a message of potential and optimism for the Philippines. American Samoa was attacked this week as the bells of Aylen, Hull, and Warden rushed to evacuate civilians from the island before it could be occupied by the Morgana, as the island lacked sufficient defenses to drive off a large Morgana force. While soldiers and volunteers rushed to prepare what defenses they could, The remaining non-combatants were successfully loaded onto ships and escaped harm. When the Morgana attacked, however, they did not shell or land troops. Instead, a large group of sloths enveloped the island with their hulls and lounged on the beach. While the island was lost, the people were saved. Task Force 13, a submarine reconnaissance force studying the ghost ship phenomenon, successfully tracked their movements to the Arctic Circle, but lacking the protection of the Bell, the fleet was forced to retreat from heavy Morgana mist. Secretary of State Cordell Hull confirmed that Chile had requested U.S. assistance in fighting off Morgana-backed attacks from Argentina that had left the city of Santiago in chaos. He also gave a veiled threat to Japan in light of the recent claim that Southeast Asia would be economically bound to them, citing that the stability of various countries in the region were of U.S. interest. When questioned about U.S. response to a hypothetical German invasion of Greenland, the Secretary only responded that such events were premature and hypothetical. Finally, in Norfolk, a search went out for potentially missed vestures from Olympia, currently docked in the naval base. While veterans and memorabilia from the ship were located, several on site remarked that the ship did not feel complete without her missing figurehead. Elsewhere on the base, Burton was denied a request to replicate their experiments from Acosta on Centurion until a suitably safe facility could be constructed. This has been WVBN from the United States.